Good afternoon and warm welcome to the World News Review on Independent Television, Abuja. I am Nkiru Obuli. Israelis and Islamic militants in Gaza Strip over last weekend stepped up their attacks on each other in what has been called some of the most intense exchanges in recent years, just as a Taliban suicide bomber attacked the police headquarters in northern Afghanistan. Osaoname Bizbe has the details of this and more news on the foreign scene.
Israel and militants in the Gaza Strip have stepped up their attacks on each other in some of the most intense exchanges of recent years. Palestinian militants have fired more than 450 rockets into Israeli territory over the weekend. Many were intercepted, but 3 Israeli men have been killed. Israel has hit about 220 targets in the Gaza Strip and threatened further massive strikes. Gaza officials says 8 Palestinians have been killed since Friday. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had ordered the military to continue its massive strikes on terror elements in the Gaza Strip. He ordered that Israeli forces around Gaza would be stepped up with tank, artillery and infantry forces. The flare-up comes despite a truce agreed last month. Egypt and the United Nations have recently been trying to broker a longer-term ceasefire. Afghan officials and the armed group said a Taliban fighter driving a Humvee packed with explosives has blown himself up outside the police headquarters in Afghanistan's northern Baghlan province. At least 20 people were wounded in the attack in Pul-e-Kurme city on Sunday. No deaths have been reported yet in the suicide attack claimed by the Taliban. Officials said armed fighters belonging to the group entered the police headquarters after the blast and opened fire on security forces stationed there. A spokesman at the Interior Ministry in Kabul, Nasrat Rahimi, said the Afghan forces shot down a Taliban fighter who tried to enter the police headquarters, but several other fighters managed to access the offices. The Taliban has stepped up attacks on security installations to demoralize Afghan police and troops, even as it holds direct talks with officials from the United States to end the 17-year war in Afghanistan. North Korea has confirmed via state media that leader Kim Jong-un has overseen a strike drill testing various missile components. A number of short-range projectiles were also fired from the Hojo Peninsula into the Sea of Japan on Saturday. The announcement said North Korea's leader gave the order of firing to increase the combat ability of the country. U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted he believed Mr. Kim would not jeopardize the path towards better relations. He ordered that the North Korean leader knows that he is with him and does not want to break his promise to him. President Trump walked away from what he described as a bad deal offered by Kim Jong-un at a summit meeting in Hanoi in February, in reference to a deal that has strained ties between the NATO allies. Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay said Turkey will never bow to the U.S. sanctions over its agreement to buy Russian S-400 defense systems. Washington has said the X-400 could compromise the capabilities of its F-35 fighter jets, for which it has a separate deal with Turkey, and warned of possible U.S. sanctions if Ankara pushed on with the Russian deal. Ankara has said the S-400 and F-35s would not affect each other and that it will not abandon the former.
The Duke of Sussex announced that the Duchess of Sussex has given birth to a boy Monday. For more news on the foreign scene, let's join Effie Eguari.
Prince Harry said they were absolutely thrilled and thanked the public for their support during the pregnancy. He said Meghan and the baby were doing incredibly well, adding that they were still thinking about names for the infant, who was delivered at 5:26 British Standard Time. Buckingham Palace said the baby weighed 7 lbs and that the Duke was present for the birth. The Duchess's mother, Doria Ragland, who is overjoyed by the arrival of her first grandchild, is with Her Royal Highness at Frogmore Cottage. There has been a lull in hostilities in the Gaza Strip after Palestinian militants said that a ceasefire with Israel had been agreed. It comes after a weekend during which Palestinian militants launched hundreds of rockets into Israel, prompting retaliatory air and artillery strikes. At least 4 Israelis and 25 Palestinians were killed. Israel has not confirmed the truce, but its military has lifted emergency measures in place in southern Israel.
The president of the 73rd General Assembly, Maria Fernando Espinosa, Tuesday described the continuous shrinking of the Lake Chad as one of the major climate change disasters confronting Nigeria and other countries which depend on the water from the basin. She stated this when she held bilateral talks with Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, in Abuja. Al-Hassan Bala has more.
For the first time, Maria Fernanda Espinosa Graces, who is the United Nations General Assembly President, visited Nigeria. As earlier announced by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she arrived Abuja on Monday evening, and on Tuesday she held this bilateral meeting with Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs. The discussion was mainly on Nigeria's role in ensuring peace and security in West Africa, the challenges of development, environmental protection, education, and Nigeria's presidency of the 74th General Assembly later this year. The major issue they discuss here is the Lake Chad, a lake which has shrunk dangerously in the size over the last few decades. Mr. Onyema is again seeking for an international effort to recharge it.
And in particular, you are coming from Chad, and you have seen at first hand the climate-induced shrinkage of Lake Chad, and for us it's an existential issue because this is a lake that almost 30 million people depend on for their livelihood, and we have seen it shrink by almost 90% over the years, and this has created very severe challenges for the people of that sub-region, and indeed for our country.
Mrs. Gassi says she is in Nigeria to strengthen ties between the UN and Nigeria. She underscored the importance of regional effort to end the problem. She says it is surest way to tackle the effort of climate change and insecurity.
I think that the regional response is extremely important. This multinational joint task force, I think it has a great role to play, but it's only a part of the equation. Perhaps a more important part of the equation is to look at the challenges in the Lake Chad areas as multidimensional and as from a holistic approach.
A Nigerian is expected to succeed Mrs. Gassi as President of the United Nations General Assembly. Al-Hassan Bala, ITV News, Abuja.
A spokesperson for South Sudan's president said at least 33 people have been killed by a wildfire in the country's western belt, El Ghazal region. Let's join Evie Aguari for more news on the foreign scene.
Ateni Wek Ateni, a spokesman for South Sudan president, said at least 33 people have been killed by a wildfire in the country's western El Ghazal region. 60 people are also in a critical condition after the fire, which was fanned by gusty winds, gutted 4 villages on Sunday. He said the injured are receiving medication, which is not sufficient given the remote state of the area in which the incident has taken place. On Tuesday, Mathokwa, Lord State Information Minister, he said the fire had also destroyed 138 houses in villages in Korok East County and killed 10,000 cattle. South Sudan has been mired in conflict between the government and several rebel groups since December 2013. The conflict has killed tens of thousands and displaced almost 4 million people from their homes, including more than 1 million refugees who have fled to neighboring countries. Congratulations have poured in from around the world following the birth of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's son. The newborn was delivered at 5:26 British Standard Time on Monday, with Prince Harry saying the baby boy was absolutely to die for. The palace said the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales were all delighted with the news. Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, was said to be overjoyed, while former US First Lady Michelle Obama said she and Barack were thrilled. The baby, who has not been named yet, is seventh in line to the throne, behind the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cambridge and his children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, and Prince Harry. He is the Queen's 8th great-grandchild.
And Britain's Prince Harry and wife Meghan Wednesday announced their new son will be called Archie, ending months of intense speculation. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who made the announcement on their Instagram account, said they are pleased to announce they have named their firstborn child Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Introducing him to the cameras earlier in the day, Meghan said, and I quote, "He has the sweetest temperament. He's really calm. He has been the dream," end of quote. The announcement came after the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh met their 8th and newest great-grandchild for the first time at Windsor Castle. Talking about their first few days as parents, Meghan said, "It is magic. It is pretty amazing. I have the 2 best guys in the world, so I'm really happy." Iran has suspended commitments under the 2015 international nuclear deal a year after it was abandoned by the United States. President Hassan Rouhani said he will keep enriched uranium stocks in the country rather than sell them abroad. He has also threatened to resume production of uranium enriched to a higher level in 60 days from the day of announcement. The accord was aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear ambitions in return for sanctions relief. Iran informed the remaining parties to the deal. The countries include France, Germany, Russia, China, and the UK of its decision Wednesday morning. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Iran was acting within its rights under the deal, and it was up to the 3 European powers to act. In response, French Defense Minister Florence Parly told the French media that the European powers were doing everything they could to keep the deal alive, but there will be consequences and possibly sanctions if the deal was not adhered to. And the Cuban government has cancelled the country's 12th annual march against homophobia. In a post, the state-run National Center for Sex Education blamed new tensions in the international and regional context for the cancellation. Activists have also condemned the move and questioned the country's motives. Cuba was set to approve same-sex marriage under a new constitution, but removed the clause after protests. President Miguel Diaz-Canel publicly backed the change in September of last year, saying it was a part of eliminating any type of discrimination in the society. But the government backtracked after an outcry from religious groups. Cuba holds events at this time every year to mark the International Day Against Homophobia on 17th May. The Taliban has attacked the offices of an international non-governmental organization, NGO, in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan, setting off a huge explosion. Officials said Wednesday that at least 9 people were injured as the armed groups exchanged fire with the Afghan security forces. Nusrat Rahimi, spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior, said the target of the attack was Counterpart International, an NGO headquartered in the United States that has been operating in Afghanistan since 2005. The NGO's office is located near the Attorney General's office in Shah el-Noor area in Kabul. Afghan's Grand Council demanded immediate and permanent ceasefire. Interior Ministry spokesperson Nusrat Rahimi said at least 80 employees of the NGO were rescued and security forces were clearing other buildings in the area. And according to rescue and police officials, at least 8 people have been killed and more than 24 wounded in a blast outside a prominent Sufi shrine in the eastern Pakistani city of Lahore. The blast took place Wednesday morning, targeting a police security vehicle outside the Data Dabar shrine in Pakistan's second-largest city. Provincial Police Chief Arif Nawaz told journalists shortly after the attack that the 8 people killed included 5 policemen. Rescue Services spokesperson Mohammed Farouk told newsmen that at least 5 of those injured were in critical conditions and being treated at Lahore's Mayor Hospital. Nawaz, the provincial police chief, said police were the target of the bombing. Prosecutors in Germany say they have dropped their investigation into Helmut Hopp, who worked as a doctor in a notorious commune in southern Chile. Hopp was the right-hand man of Paul Schaefer, a former Nazi soldier who founded Colonial Dignidad in 1961. A court in Chile found Hopp guilty of complicity in child sex abuse committed by Schaefer, but the doctor fled to Germany before he could be jailed. German prosecutors said the evidence was not enough to uphold the ruling. Hopp's lawyer said that his client was disgusted by the cruelties committed in Colonial Dignidad, but that he had never suspected that they were taking place. He moved to southern Chile with a group of his followers and established Colonial Dignidad as a highly authoritarian agricultural commune with himself as the leader. 8 European countries have called for an ambitious strategy to tackle climate change and to spend a quarter of the entire EU budget to fight it. The joint statement said the EU should have net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 at the latest. It was signed by France, Belgium, Denmark, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden. The group said their plan can go hand in hand with prosperity and set an example for other countries to follow. The position paper comes ahead of a major summit of European leaders in Romania, which began Thursday, which will discuss the future of Europe and the EU strategy for the next 5 years. But not everyone is on board. There are 28 countries in the European Union, and several of those absent from the joint statements, opposition statement, who are significant players, include Germany. And anger over corruption, the faltering economy, and land reforms are key issues dominating the South Africa's election 25 years after apartheid. Let's join Lulu Bangkong for more news on the foreign scene.
Anger over corruption, the faltering economy, and land reform are key issues as South Africans vote in the 6th democratic national election since apartheid ended 25 years ago. Young people queuing to vote have been speaking of their difficulties in finding jobs, with unemployment at 27%. The African National Congress, which led the fight against apartheid, has governed the country since 1994, but its support has eroded as large inequalities have remained. There are concerns about voter apathy despite more than 26 million people registering to vote, the highest number in South Africa's history. Local surveys suggest that 6 million people under the age of 30 are not on the electoral roll. Rescue and police officials say at least 8 people have been killed and more than 24 wounded in a blast outside a prominent Sufi shrine in the eastern Pakistani city of Lahore. The blast took place on Wednesday morning, targeting a police security vehicle outside the Data Darbar Shrine in Pakistan's second largest city. Provincial Police Chief Arif Nawaz told reporters shortly after the attack that the 8 people killed included 5 policemen. Footage from the scene showed a badly damaged police vehicle and debris strewn in front of the shrine. Rescue Services spokesman Mohammed Farouk said at least 5 of those wounded were in critical condition and being treated at Lahore's Mayor Hospital.
We'll go on a short break now and return with more foreign reports. Please stay with us.
The Nigerian child deserves the best. ITV Abuja, in recognition of how special the Nigerian child is, brings to you Children's Day Fiesta Royale. Special feature, talk on upholding the dignity of the girl child. There will be plenty of games and competitions, comedy, music and dancing. You just have to be there. Date 27th May 2019. Time 9 a.m. prompt. Venue Eric Villaggio Event Center, Kubwa. Gate fee 1,000 naira only. For inquiries, call. Shower your blessing. We want this morning. ITV Children's Fiesta Royal. The Nigerian child is royalty.
You're welcome back, and now to other reports. Votes were being counted in South Africa's election, with President Cyril Ramaphosa hoping to prevent a landslide in support for the governing African National Congress ANC. With results declared in some 38% of districts, it has won about 56% of the ballot, well ahead of the opposition Democratic Alliance DA on 25%. The ANC took 62% at the last general election in 2014. Anger over the economy and corruption may have eroded its appeal. The Radical Economic Freedom Fighters is in third place with 9% based on the official early reports. Analysts said that if the ANC vote remains above 55%, it will enable President Ramaphosa to strengthen his grip on the party. Meanwhile, the South Korean military says North Korea has fired 2 short-range missiles in its second weapons test in less than a week. The missiles fired from the northwestern city of Kusang traveled 420 kilometers and 270 kilometers towards the east. The text comes as a top U.S. envoy is in South Korea for talks on how to break the deadlock over nuclear negotiations. A meeting in Vietnam between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump ended without an agreement in February, with the U.S. insisting North Korea gives up its nuclear program and Pyongyang demanding sanctions relief. The 2 missiles were fired at 16:30 local time. A court in Montenegro has handed 5 years jail term to 2 pro-Russian opposition politicians for trying to topple the government in October of 2016. The court also found 12 others guilty, including 2 Russian alleged GRU secret agents tried in absentia. Prosecutors said the plotters had Kremlin support to assassinate then Prime Minister Milo Djukanovic and block NATO ascension. Montenegro's opposition had consistently rejected the charges, alleging what it called a false flag operation, a fake act aimed at incriminating an opponent to keep Mr. Djukanovic in. The opposition leaders jailed Thursday are Andriy Mandic and Milan Knežević, MPs and the Democratic Front Alliance. The government forces have captured the town of Khaled al-Mahdig in northwest Syria. Some of its residents and a war monitor said Thursday as they pushed into the biggest remaining rebel territory. Syria's army, backed by Russian air power, launched ground operations this week against the southern flank of the rebel zone consisting of Idlib and parts of adjacent provinces. The area is nominally protected by a Russian-Turkish deal agreement last year to avert a major new battle. Khaled al-Mahdig was the rebel area closest to the Russian Khmeini air base at Latakia, which fighters had previously targeted with rocket fires. And a deadly Taliban attack on a United States-based aid group in the Afghan capital have raised concern among other relief organizations that could also be targeted. Authorities said Wednesday's assault on Counterpart International in Kabul killed at least 9 persons as fighters set off a huge explosion and battled security forces for over 6 hours. Anti-poverty group CARE, which has its offices close to Counterpart International, said 3 of its workers, a driver, watchman, and a technical advisor were killed in the blast. At least 20 civilians were wounded in the attack, which saw several Taliban gunmen storm the Counterpart's compound after the blast. They were all killed by Afghan commandos. And Pope Francis has made it mandatory for Roman Catholic clergy to report cases of clerical sexual abuse and cover-ups to the church. In an apostolic letter, which is set to become church law, he made clear that any sexual advance involving the use of power will now be considered abusive. The clarification is being seen as a message to the church hierarchy that no one will be exempt from scrutiny. The Pope promised in February to take concrete action to tackle abuse. The new apostolic letter makes clear that clerics should also follow state law and meet their obligations to report any abuse to the competent civil authorities. And dozens of fighters from an armed group known as Mai Mai went into the northeastern city of Butembo in the Democratic Republic of Congo and fought with security forces. Let's join Blessing Omaro for this and more news on the foreign scene.
Dozens of fighters from an armed group known as Mai Mai went into the northeastern city of Butembo in the Democratic Republic of Congo and fought with security forces on Wednesday. Their target was an Ebola treatment center. This comes as the region experiences a violent uprising. An armed group tried to turn efforts to fight Ebola into a political tool. Butembo Mayor Sylvain Kayamanda says one of the militants was killed and 4 more arrested after the attack on the Katwa hospital in the city of Butembo in the northern province of North Kivu. Butembo City's Deputy Mayor Patrick Kambale Cisco told newsmen that the attackers were armed with machetes and tried to burn down the center. Police in Northern Ireland on Thursday arrested 4 people in connection with last month's murder of journalist Lara McKay. The 4, aged 15, 18, 38 and 51, were arrested in Londonderry under terrorism legislation and have been taken to Belfast for questioning by detectives. McKay was shot while reporting on violent disturbances in Londonderry, also known as Derry, last month. The New Era, an armed Republican group, claimed responsibility for her death, but also accused police of provoking the riots which preceded it.
And that's all on the World News Review. Many thanks for staying tuned. I'm Nkiru Obuli. See you next time.